Hey everyone, welcome back to The Deep Dive. We're diving into something pretty crucial today. Have you ever had that feeling, where you're watching an English movie or you're reading an article online
Yeah.
and you understand everything just fine?
Right.
Like you're following along, no problem.
Yeah.
But then when you actually need to speak English, like
Oh, yeah.
in a real conversation,
Oh, yeah.
it's like your brain just hits a wall.
Totally.
Like the words just aren't there.
For sure.
You're not alone. That sounds familiar.
It is so common.
So common.
And it's interesting because it's often not about a lack of vocabulary.
Right.
It's not that you haven't studied enough.
Right.
It's something it's something about the way that our brains work when we're trying to speak.
Exactly.
Versus when we're listening or reading.
It's not that we don't have the knowledge, it's that we can't access it.
Exactly.
When we need to speak.
Yeah, it's about the mental processes involved.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay, sounds good.
We're going to look at why this happens and, most importantly, what you can do about it.
Love it.
We want to help you go from understanding English well to actually speaking it more fluently.
Awesome.
So to start,
Yes.
let's talk about this fundamental difference between input and output.
Okay.
As you were saying, most English learners spend a lot of time listening to podcasts.
Of course.
Like this one, hopefully, watching videos, reading books and articles.
Right.
This is all input.
It is.
It's all essential for building comprehension.
It's the foundation.
Exactly.
And, if we think about it in terms of how our brains work, the brain has different areas that specialize in different things.
Right.
And when it comes to language, understanding language primarily engages what's called Wernicke's area.
Wernicke's area?
Yeah, it's in the temporal lobe.
Okay.
And it's all about processing the sounds and meanings of words.
So when we're listening or reading, we're using this Wernicke's area.
Exactly.
And we're absorbing all this vocabulary.
Yep.
Getting a feel for sentence structure.
Right.
Improving our listening skills.
All of that.
But here's the thing.
Exactly.
Just because we're taking in all this information doesn't automatically mean we can speak.
Right. It doesn't mean we can produce the language.
Right.
Because speaking is an active skill.
It is.
It's what we call output. It demands that your brain actively retrieves vocabulary, constructs sentences in real time, and coordinates the movements of your mouth and vocal cords.
Wow. So there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
Then we speak.
Yes. And to make this even clearer, you could spend years watching professional athletes play a sport.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
But that doesn't mean you can go out and perform at their level.
Right.
You need to train.
Yes.
You need to practice those specific skills.
Exactly. It's the same with language.
Exactly.
You have to actually practice speaking.
And in terms of the brain, speaking heavily relies on areas like Broca's area.
Okay, another brain area.
Yes, this one's in the frontal lobe. And it's involved in planning and producing speech.
So Wernicke's area is for understanding. Broca's area is for speaking.
You got it.
Fascinating.
And speaking also involves the motor cortex,
which
is responsible for controlling your movements.
Of course.
Including the movements of your mouth and tongue.
So we're using multiple parts of our brains when we speak.
And building fluency is about strengthening the connections between these areas.
The receptive and the expressive areas.
Precisely.
Through practice.
Through practice.
That's a great analogy with the athletes.
Thanks.
It really highlights how we need to approach speaking as its own skill.
Absolutely.
It's not just a passive byproduct of understanding.
It's something you have to work on specifically.
Exactly. You have to train for it.
So knowing this, what's the first step?
Okay, so the first step...
For someone who wants to speak more easily, the most straightforward answer, and this might sound too simple, is to speak more.
Just speak more?
Yes, you need to shift the balance from input to output.
From listening and reading to speaking.
Exactly. You need to actively engage in language output.
Okay. I like that active engagement.
Because many learners wait until they feel ready.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
They think they need to learn more words or perfect their grammar
before they can speak.
Yes, but the reality is you'll never feel completely ready.
That's true.
Without practice.
Without actually doing it.
Exactly.
It's like waiting for the perfect moment.
Yes, and that moment might never come.
Exactly.
You have to jump in.
So what's the mindset shift that needs to happen here?
The crucial thing is to accept that you won't be perfect at first.
Okay.
You'll make mistakes.
We all do.
You'll hesitate. You might forget words.
Right.
But that's okay.
It is.
It's part of the process.
It's normal.
It's like learning any new skill. Think of it as your speaking muscles getting a workout.
I like that analogy.
They'll be weak at first.
Yeah.
But they'll get stronger with practice.
So we have to accept that we're going to make mistakes.
We do.
And that it's okay.
It's more than okay. It's essential.
Okay. But I know for a lot of people, the fear of making mistakes is a huge hurdle.
It is a big one.
They're so worried about sounding stupid or not being perfect.
I understand.
That it can really hold them back.
Absolutely.
How do we overcome that?
This brings us to another key aspect.
Okay.
Overcoming perfectionism and the fear of errors.
Yeah. We have to let go of that need to be perfect.
We do, because here's the thing. Mistakes are actually really valuable.
How so?
They're feedback.
Okay.
They show us where we need to improve.
Instead of seeing them as something negative,
right,
we can see them as information.
Exactly.
That helps us learn.
Yes. And to illustrate this, think about how babies learn to speak.
They make a ton of mistakes.
Yeah, they do. They experiment with sounds.
Yeah.
They make grammatical errors.
Right.
But it's through those attempts that they eventually learn to speak correctly.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. And learning a new language as an adult, it's similar.
We have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes.
You do.
And not be afraid of them.
Exactly.
So if we accept that mistakes are part of the process, what are some practical things we can do?
To start speaking more comfortably.
Yeah, give us some tools.
Okay, so one really effective technique is called shadowing.
Shadowing. Have you heard of this?
I have, but I'm sure some of our listeners haven't.
Okay, so shadowing is basically you listen to a sentence or a short audio clip in English. And then you immediately repeat it. Trying to copy the speaker's rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation.
So we're not necessarily focused on understanding every single word.
Not at first, no. The main focus is on the physical act of speaking.
Getting your mouth and tongue used to forming English sounds.
So it's almost like physical training.
It is. It's like training your mouth
to
produce the sounds of English.
And we're also getting a feel for the natural flow of English sentences.
Exactly. The rhythm and intonation.
Okay, so shadowing is one technique.
It is.
Now what's another one?
Another one that's surprisingly effective is self-talk.
Talking to yourself.
Yes, talking to yourself in English.
Like narrating your day.
Exactly. You can describe what you're doing, what you're seeing, or even just think out loud in English.
So for example,
if you're making breakfast, you could say, I'm getting the eggs out of the fridge. Now I need to find a pan.
Right.
I think I'll make scrambled eggs today.
I can see how that would be helpful.
It is.
But I also think some people might feel a little awkward.
I know it can feel strange at first.
Talking to themselves.
It can, but it's a really low-pressure way to practice. You're not worried about making mistakes in front of anyone.
Right.
And it helps you get used to thinking in English.
Which is so important.
It's a crucial step towards fluency.
And it's something we can do anytime, anywhere.
Exactly.
So we've got shadowing and self-talk.
Yes.
What about when someone's ready to actually have conversations?
That's when you need to find speaking opportunities.
Like how?
Well, there are lots of ways. You could join a language exchange online.
Where you can talk to native speakers.
Exactly. Or you could practice with friends who are also learning English.
Even if they're not native speakers.
Exactly. The important thing is to just speak.
Just get those reps in.
Yes. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become.
And the less scary it will feel.
For sure.
So we're creating these low-pressure environments where we can just practice and experiment without feeling judged.
Without feeling like the stakes are too high.
Okay, so to recap, we've talked about the difference between input and output. We talked about the fear of making mistakes.
Right.
And how to overcome it.
And we've given some practical strategies for speaking more.
Like shadowing self-talk and finding speaking opportunities.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember that any awkwardness or difficulty you feel at first, it's temporary.
It is.
With practice, it will get easier.
Your brain will adapt.
And you'll feel more confident.
Definitely.
And that confidence will help you keep going.
It's a positive cycle.
So for our listeners out there who are struggling to speak English,
I hear you.
Even though they understand it well.
It's a common problem.
Remember these key points.
Okay.
Prioritize speaking practice.
Yes.
Even if it feels uncomfortable.
do it anyway.
Don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back.
Mistakes are your friends.
They really are.
They're how you learn.
Experiment with shadowing.
It's a great way to get your mouth moving.
Talk to yourself in English.
As much as you can.
And look for opportunities to speak with others.
Even if it's just for a few minutes.
And most importantly, remember that speaking is a skill.
It is.
It's like any other skill.
Like playing an instrument.
Or playing a sport.
Exactly.
You have to practice it.
You have to put in the time.
So here's a challenge for you.
Okay, I like a challenge.
Right now.
Right now.
Say something in English.
Go for it.
Even if it's just one sentence.
Just get those vocal cords vibrating.
You can do it.
And one final thought.
Yes.
Think about when you first learned to speak your native language.
Oh?
You didn't start with perfect grammar.
Oh, yeah.
You started by making sounds, by experimenting, by trying to communicate.
It was all about practice.
It was, and learning to speak English.
Yes.
It's the same.
It's a journey.
It is.
Of practice and experimentation.
Embrace the journey.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
And keep speaking.
Keep speaking.